Oh, hello, hello. I'm in the Hyatt Hotel in Seattle right now. Oh my goodness, I just realized that I must have scratched myself or something. I don't think that was there last night. Whoa, look. I wonder if I like got in a fight in my sleep or something. I don't ever remember that happening. Okay, well, I'm in Seattle and I have this hotel until noon. It's currently 12:03 here. I don't know if they're gonna count, but I like this hotel. It's the one that the company paid for, and I'm staying a couple extra days, but I only get this hotel for one night, and I'm gonna move to a hotel that's like half the price. But I feel like since this is a great place to read, I'm just gonna hang out until they kick me out. So this is like sudden death power broker reading. I have my stuff all packed, so if they knock on the door and tell me I have to get out, I will get out right away. But I figured I'd at least try to read some Robert Caro. There's really not much to report. I'm drinking the worst coffee I've had in my life. Maybe it's from a Keurig here. Also, there's an anime convention downstairs, so hopefully that means that the desk is just swarmed and they don't have time to kick me out of the room. Okay. Roosevelt was unsure how to deal with the challenge. So were his legal advisors, some of whom told him to avoid a test of the issue in the courts since a decision could go either way, and since, while it was being decided, all state expenditures might be paralyzed. The new governor's initial inclination was to sign the bills, distasteful though their writer may have been. And they're trying to make a budget. When, however, he asked Moses' opinion, he was told to veto the bills. The courts, Moses said, would hold that the governor's budget was constitutional and the legislature's unconstitutional. And it was perfectly possible to work out a method for financing state activities while the courts were deliberating. Roosevelt sent his former law partner, Basil O'Connor, to see George Wickersham, the reformer and ex-U.S. Attorney General, and Wickersham said Moses was right. As Roosevelt drafted a veto message, he found himself asking Moses for suggestions. Moses gave them, and the message, as delivered to the legislature, was substantially the one Moses wrote. When lawyers began to draft the governor's brief, they found themselves relying more and more on Moses for background information. Then they realized they were relying on him for strategy. On November 19, 1929, the 7 members of the state's highest court, the Court of Appeals, held unanimously, as Moses had predicted they would, that the legislature's action was unconstitutional. The principle of executive and legislative separation was at last irrevocably established in New York State, and Roosevelt had learned the truth of a saying of Al Smith's: "If Bob Moses says it's constitutional, it's constitutional." We keep Al Smith has so many sayings. I love that guy. Um, of all the people in this book that I would want to hang out with, I've probably said this before, Al Smith probably tops the list. I just realized it took me a long time to put this together, but you know how Al Smith would always have like really boozy parties? It was prohibition. Like that was no wonder people liked him and thought he was such a chiller. He was going to the speakeasy and he was the governor. Okay, anyway. Also, I have to make sure I'm not dehydrated because I have not been drinking enough water lately. Sorry to use single-use plastic. I don't do it very much. Sometimes I do. And then there was Moses' record of accomplishment and his potential for more accomplishment. The fact that Moses had gotten things done and could get things done again. Moses' cleverness in writing laws, cementing himself in power, helped explain Roosevelt's initial decision not to try to take that power away. But a large part of the explanation for Roosevelt's subsequent willingness to increase Moses's power was not cleverness, but accomplishment, the record of what Moses had done with the power he had given himself. For the accomplishment and the potential for more accomplishment had very strong political connotations indeed. The program for which Moses had so frantically shoveled sod under Smith came to bloom in the first of Roosevelt's gubernatorial summers. The summer of 1929 was the summer of the Hoover Market. It was the summer of General Motors, Radio and Big Steel, of AT&T, of General Electric, which would by Labor Day hit 306, having more than tripled its price in 18 months. The summer of 1929 was the summer of Big Bill Tilden, who won his 7th American Amateur Tennis Championship, of Bobby Jones and his putter, Calamity Jane, who together carried off the U.S. Open Golf Championship, of Ernest Hemingway's Farewell to Arms, and of Thomas Wolfe, whose first novel, Look Homeward, Angel, was uncrated at the bookstores in June. It was the summer of Kate Smith, who began in those golden months her career as a radio songstress, and of Gertrude Berg, who in those months first shouted Yoo-hoo across a Bronx air shaft. And the summer of 1929 was the summer of Robert Moses. Heckscher State Park was formally opened in June, and the onlooker who shouted, "God bless him," when Moses was introduced, was only sounding the first note of the chorus of hosannas the summer was to bring. You owe this park to the amazing public spirit of Robert Moses, August Heckscher told 15,000 cheering onlookers, and Lieutenant Governor Lehman, praising Moses for his vision and courage, agreed. The Southern State Parkway was opened in July, and fathers driving their families along the lovely tree-shaded road, which, with a width of 40 feet, seemed wonderfully wide, were explaining to their wives what no grade crossings meant, and telling their children, as they passed Wantock, that by the end of the summer, they would be able to take another parkway there and drive down to the ocean and swim, and every newspaper story on the Southern state coupled its marvels with the name of its creator. And when, on August 4, 1929, the Wantock Causeway opened the way to Jones Beach, the hosannas became a hallelujah chorus. On the day the causeway opened, 25,000 cars rolled across it. In the first month of its operation, attendance at Jones Beach State Park, which legislators had said would never justify its investment because people would never drive 40 miles to park on a sandbar, topped 325,000. The press, not only New York's press, but the press of the entire country, spoke of the expanses of surf and sand in tones of awe. If you're just coming in, I'm overstaying at my hotel. The checkout was 10 minutes ago, but I think I don't know if they'll notice if I stay a little late. Also, I don't know why I have scratches. They just appeared. Maybe it was an attacker. Okay. Reporters vied with one another in searching for superlatives to describe the parking areas that one said looked as big as a cattle range, and bathhouses such as you have never seen before. The praise wasn't only for the size of the park's buildings, it was for the taste with which they had been designed and the ingenuity with which there had been worked into their steel and stone, delicate details which the eye, to its delight, was endlessly discovering. Visitors could see that the nautical theme had been carried out everywhere. Walking along the mile-long boardwalk connecting the two bathhouses, they noticed that the boardwalk railing was a ship's railing. Bending down to drink from a water fountain, they found that the fountains were turned on and off by ship's pilot wheels. Looking for trash cans, they found them concealed in ship's funnels. Looking up, visitors saw the flagpole's crow nests and yard arms and halyards decorated with long rows of bright semaphore signals. They saw ships' lanterns swinging on davits from the lampposts. Looking down, expecting the paved walks in the park to be standard gray concrete, they were surprised by mosaics of compasses, maps, and gay seashore that Moses had chosen as the emblem of Jones Beach, set into the concrete. The games along the boardwalk were ship's games: shuffleboard, quoits, deck tennis, ping pong. Even the pitch and putt golf course was made maritime by the placing near every hole of some reminder of the sea: a rusty anchor, the keel of an ancient boat, old rum kegs retrieved from the Great South Bay. All Jones Beach employees were garbed as sailors, complete with sailor caps, and their supervisors wore officers' uniforms, complete with gold braid. And every button on the uniform was engraved with a seahorse. Uh, Architects exclaimed over the long, low, sweeping lines of the bathhouses and restaurants. Their medieval and Moorish cast, the combination of Ohio sandstone and Barbizon brick. Perfect, exulted one architect, perfect, with which they were faced. They were startled when, searching for the water tower, they realized that it was concealed in the 200-foot high campanile. I don't know what that is. They described with delight the diaper changing rooms, the cutouts of bowmen crouching against the dune that formed the backdrop for the archery range, the symbolic ironwork cutouts on the directional signs, the gay devices of stone and brick, all the touches that Robert Moses, standing alone on a deserted sandbar, had decided he must have in his great park. It is in the smaller things that Mr. Moses is at his very best, Architectural Forum was to say. Usually, a public institution of any kind in this country has been the occasion for especially dull architecture and walls of cheerless dimensions which invite only the scribbling of small obscenities. But Mr. Moses, being especially a romanticist, has revived the handicraft spirit in his designers, with the results that the equipment at Jones Beach exhibits an irrelevant and endearing good spirits. The architecture has the great virtue of being scaled down to the size of a good time. Even the Herald Tribune could only wax rhapsodic over this most prosaically named, most beautifully landscaped of beaches. And the letters on the editorial page almost outdid the editorials. Ernest Beale of Manhattan, just back from a cross-country trip, hastened to take pen in hand to inform his fellow Times readers, "I have visited nearly all the important beach resorts in this country, and I must say that nowhere on this continent is there a public or private beach that is even comparable to the one that the state, under Robert Moses, has built." 1,000 letters to the editor echoed Beale's appraisal. A nation looked at Robert Moses's dream and found it good. And not just the nation. Delegations of architects and park designers came from France, from England, even from Scandinavia, a traditional leader in park development, to learn from Jones Beach. Their comments were summed up by one Englishman who said flatly, "This is the finest seashore playground ever given to the public anywhere in the world." Never, observers agreed, had any park been kept as clean as Jones Beach. College students hired for the summer were formed into courtesy squads. Patrolling the boardwalk, conspicuous in snow-white sailor suits and caps, they hurried to pick up dropped papers and cigarette butts while the droppers were still in the vicinity. They never reprimanded the culprits, but simply bent down, picked up the litter, and put it in the trash basket. To make the resultant embarrassment of the litterers more acute, Moses refused to let the courtesy squatters use sharp-pointed sticks to pick up litter without stooping. He wanted the earnest, clean-cut college boys stooping, Moses explained to his aides. It would make the litterers more ashamed. He even issued the courtesy squad large cloths so that they could wipe from the boardwalk gobs of spittle. His methods worked. As one writer put it, You will feel like a heel. You will feel like a heel if you do so much as drop a gum wrapper. The lines of wire trash receptacles on the clean white sand were only a symbol of the emphasis on cleanliness there also. At intervals, loudspeakers sounded a bugle call, and then an announcer, in a carefully modulated tone, thanked the visitors for their cooperation in keeping the beach clean. The effect, as one observer wrote, is magical. In no time at all, every guilty culprit is doing KP in his immediate area. Moses's methods extended to his parkways. Stetson state troopers stopped every car entering them and gave the driver a card printed with rules of the road, which carefully spelled out rules against roadside picnicking and littering. And the rules were enforced. Littering summonses were issued wholesale. Occasionally, when troopers came across a whole bag of garbage that had been tossed from an automobile window, they would try to identify the driver from the contents. If they could, they would call on him at his home to issue a summons, and Moses would see that there was a troop of newspaper photographers along to record the culprit's expression when he opened the door. The public praised also the success with which Moses had kept Jones Beach free of the usual amusement park trappings of other public beaches. There are no concessions, no booths, no bawling hot dog vendors, marveled one writer. You won't see any weight guessers, or 3 throws for a dime and a win dolly alleys, or blaring fun houses. For almost the history of public beaches, this beach is conceived as a spot for recreation, not amusement stimulated by honky-tonk. Whenever Jones Beach was the subject of a magazine article, it seemed, and it was the subject of literally scores in the 1930s, the article contained at least once the word wholesome. The public beat a path to Moses's door. In 1930, the attendance at Jones Beach would be 1,500,000. In 1931, 2,700,000. In 1932, 3,200,000. The path itself, so recently completed, was jammed to capacity and then to overcapacity. Although all grade crossings had been eliminated on the southern state, 2, one at Sunrise Highway and one at Merrick Road, remained on the Wantagh because of the refusal of the legislature to allocate money for bridges that would carry the 2 crossroads over the causeway. For the same reason, there was a half-mile gap between the southern state and the Wantagh. By 1930, traffic was backing up at those spots for more than a mile on summer Sundays. In 1931, the legislature allocated funds for the bridges and a spur between the roads. Moses was jubilant. The traffic capacity of the causeway will be more than doubled, he said. The facilities at Jones Beach proved inadequate. Both bathhouses were usually filled by noon. The parking lots, as big as cattle ranges, were jammed as full as sardine tins. Valley Stream, Heckscher, and Sunken Meadow State Parks were just as crowded. Moses revealed more of the plans he had kept secret and enlarged them. There should be an increase in facilities, bathhouses, parking fields, and concessions at all state parks on Long Island, he said. There should be a short parkway, he named it the Heckscher Spur, linking the southern state with Heckscher State Park, and a Sunken Meadow State Parkway, linking the northern state with Sunken Meadow State Park. During the fall of 1930, the 2-mile-long Ocean Parkway extending along the barrier beach from Jones Beach eastward toward Fire Island was opened. When he had asked the legislature for money for the parkway, Moses had said that 2 miles of an ocean drive was all he had in mind. Now he revealed that he actually had been concealing a few other miles, 98 to be precise. Why, he demanded, shouldn't there be a continuous road bordered by the rolling Atlantic all the way from Breezy Point on the Rockaway Peninsula in New York City to Montauk Point at the tip of Long Island, a distance of 100 miles? It would not be difficult to create an ocean parkway through the Rockaways and Long Beach by widening existing streets and turning them into an ocean drive, he said. The gap between these two beaches could easily be bridged. So could the gap between Long Beach and the Jones Beach portion of the Strand. In fact, he had already broached to Hempstead Town, G. Wilbur Doughty and Tom McWhinney, to be precise, the possibility of Hempstead's building that bridge, and Hempstead seemed amenable. Hempstead should have been amenable. Some indications of the size of the political boodle involved in such a construction job may be garnered by the fact that one of the contractors involved secured a job by paying $75,000 in cash to the Nassau County Republican Organization, and just to ensure against any criticism, another $75,000 to the county's Democratic Organization. Thanks to the deeds of land on the Jones Beach portion of the Strand that he had accepted from Oyster Bay, wheedled from Hempstead, and politically blackmailed from Babylon, the Long Island Park Commission had already in hand the rights of way for the parkway along most of this 11-mile portion, which was called, in order eastward from Jones Beach State Park, High Hill Beach, Tobay Beach, Gilgo, Cedar Island Beach, Oak Beach, and Captree. At Captree, a causeway would jump a narrow inlet, and the Ocean Parkway would be on Fire Island. There, for 50 miles, it could run along the sand, the ocean stretching broad on one side, the bay beautiful on the other, until the barrier beach swung back to the Moriches to join the southern fluke of the Whale's Tail that was Long Island's eastern end. By pointing out to them that the building of a road along Fire Island would make their land immensely more valuable, he disclosed, already persuaded 67 of the 70 property owners on Fire Island, whose lands would be traversed by the parkway, to donate the right-of-way. And although two of the three laggards, immensely wealthy and immensely stubborn spinster sisters named Smith, owned so much of the land needed that no public body could afford to condemn it, he was confident that they would sign up shortly. Wow, the section about the towns made me realize that I don't know Long Island geography well enough. When the legislature balked, I want to know more about the spinster sisters named Smith, who own a bunch of land and don't want to give it up for the parkway. They seem like good characters. When the legislature balked, he pointed out that the land deeded to the state by the townships was worth millions of dollars. Did the legislators propose to let it go to waste? The legislators may have considered doing so, but in 1930, the public applause for the 2 miles of Ocean Parkway already opened. The public applause for the 2 miles of Ocean Parkway already opened. Obvious that such a course would be unwise. During the 1931 legislative session, money was appropriated to extend the road 8 miles farther through High Hill, Tobay, and Gilgo beaches. The Fire Island portion of the plan had to be dropped when the Smith sisters, for undisclosed reasons, refused to donate. But Moses came up with a substitute plan, extending the Ocean Parkway all the way along the Jones Beach portion of the barrier beach to Captree, and then bringing it back to the mainland on a causeway and linking it up to the Southern State Parkway with a spur parkway. There would be time to get to Fire Island later. Hello. Dear Robert Caro, please pause working on the last LBJ book and instead, can you maybe make a second Power Broker, but just about the spinster sisters named Smith? Thank you. Editorials hailed each new Moses plan. The best proof of the universality of their appeal was furnished by Long Island, which for so long had resisted them. At the opening of Heckscher State Park, 2 shy little girls had been ushered onto the porch of the Taylor Mansion to present Moses with a silver loving cup donated by the East Islip Community Association, a group that had been among the most vocal of W. Kingsland Macy's supporters in Macy's battle against the park. Oh, what's happening right now is Jones Beach opened, and it's a huge success, and it's so popular that things that Moses wanted before but didn't get, like bridges for the cross streets to go over so that the Southern State Parkway can just like be straight through. He's getting that because it just got so busy. All the architects are like, wow, this is so awesome. The really expensive stone that he got for the outside is just getting rave reviews in all these global publications. Yeah, that's pretty much what's happening. And then now he's trying to build a long road, another road in Long Island. I don't really know. He wants like an ocean drive. Long Island's real estate men adored Moses for opening the island to development and thus further inflating its already ballooning land values. Long Island's people had realized that they had the easiest access to the beaches he had created. A 1930 referendum in Islip Township, stronghold of the Baymen and farmers, on a proposition to deed the Long Island Park Commission land on Captree to facilitate the building of the Captree Causeway passed by a margin of more than 3-1. Long Island politicians were fully aware now of the financial benefits that would accrue to them from Moses's plans, saw the political benefits too. Immediately following the referendum, both Nassau and Suffolk County boards of supervisors spent millions condemning right-of-way for Moses's proposed parkways and presented it to him as a gift. No governor would want to be placed in the position of opposing so immensely popular a program or its creator. Financing Moses's projects placed an immense strain on the state budget. In 1929, with only those announced under Smith underway, their construction, including money spent on them out of the Public Works Department budget, cost the state $5,424,750, more than 70% of the entire state expenditure on construction projects in the metropolitan region, including Westchester County. And as the parks were opened, the cost of their maintenance began to be a sore point. Roosevelt was jolted by budget requests for almost $1 million in personal service salaries for the Long Island parks alone. Thinking of his national image, not yet aware that liberal public spending might be a way to cushion the effects of the Depression, the governor was anxious not to give opponents the chance to portray him as a big spender. By the end of 1930, moreover, state revenues had been so slashed by the Depression that the state budget was quiveringly taut. Throughout his second term, he was continually pressing his cabinet members to cut costs. There was constant friction over Moses's budget requests. I'm probably going to read like one more paragraph. But in these battles with the governor, Moses played the popularity that was his trump card for all it was worth. In fact, so sure was he, and he was right, that Roosevelt was afraid he would resign, that he began using the technique, when Roosevelt crossed him on major issues, of threatening to do so. Resignation threats begin appearing in Moses's letters to Roosevelt in the middle of 1930. By the end of that year, he had refined the wording. In November 1930, for example, Roosevelt slashed his budget requests for appropriations in the 1931 budget, and Moses wrote him, "If proposed cuts stand, I do not want any responsibility for the program." A similar threat had been strikingly ineffective when made to Ed Richards beside the swimming pool at Yale. But given the fact of his tremendous popularity, it was very effective now. Over the 4 years of Roosevelt's governorship, a pattern emerged. Moses would submit a budget request far higher than the previous years. Roosevelt would cut it back almost to the level of the previous request. Moses would tell Roosevelt he would have to resign if he didn't get the funds he wanted. Roosevelt, usually through an intermediary, would back away from the fight, restoring a substantial portion of the cut. The legislature was frantic. In 1928, Moses had assured them that the cost of the Ocean Parkway's initial 2-mile stretch would be $3,150,000. They had allocated the money, and in 1929, he showed up before them again. The $3,150,000 had been spent, he said, but he had neglected to tell them that the cost of paving the parkway would be extra, $850,000 extra. But they had been trapped. The hydraulic fill for the road had been dredged, the right-of-way graded, the surveying complete, the plans drawn. The $3,150,000 had been spent. Were they now to waste this money by refusing funds to complete the job? Cut as the legislators would, and they would always cut, the amount of the annual allocation to the Long Island Park Commission rose steadily from $3,150,000 in the last year of Smith's regime to $4 million in 1929, $4,700,000 in 1930, and $5,700,000 in 1931, the middle of the Great Depression. That's so crazy. By stake driving and whipsawing, Robert Moses was getting what he wanted from them. Okay, I'm going to stop there. Well, I'm sad to leave this hotel room in Seattle. I'm going to move to a less nice hotel, but I'll try to read tomorrow. I don't really have very much going on tomorrow. It's also Easter. I'll probably read a little bit. I'm on page 300 at the very bottom. I'm at the bottom of page 313 now. So that's exciting. Really making progress. Slowly but surely. Yeah, Seattle's fun. Chaz is kind of done. It's like just normal now. But it used to be there. Or is it? I don't know if is the name Chaz or Chop? I don't know. I wasn't there for any of that. All right. See you later.